Welcome to Contrarian by Digital Wealth Insider. Today we have Greg Landegger as our guest. I met Greg at Consensus in 2022, and I knew I had to get him on the podcast. Greg has been an avid technologist for the past few decades, which gives him a unique perspective in where technology has been and where it's going. Concurrently, Greg runs a family office and is able to give us insights into the secretive world of family offices and how they make investment decisions in technology companies. Greg, how are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me this morning.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So we met at Consensus last year, and you were kind of digging around, looking at the crypto scene. I see you've got some cool Bitcoin graphics there in the background in your office. Talk to us a little bit about your background and how you kind of entered the world of technology and crypto specifically.
Sure. So I'm with a single family office, and we are operators at heart. Started in the pulp and paper industry, and we ended up selling our operations in 2010. At that time, I actually left the family business and started working for some other companies. I actually had left prior to 2010, but worked for some others. And then in 2014, I decided, I'm having a good time, but I'm working for others, making them money. Why don't I do it for the family? So I came back to the family. Ironically, one of the first things I was told when I came back was to take a look at an investment we made in a payments company. And I started talking to them, couldn't figure out how they were sending money 24/7. And as I delved in a little bit further, I learned they were using Bitcoin. So, like many people, I flipped. I got worried as hell, started feeling that we were dealing with money launderers. This was definitely not a business we wanted to be in. But luckily, the CEO of that company was kind enough to educate me a little bit and introduce me to some people in the industry. And that sort of started me down this whole path into crypto. The way we've been investing, and crypto fits into it perfectly. A lot of people talk about contrarian investing. I don't think we're contrarian at all. There's benefits of being a single family office that you can do things with a lot less questioning, but we like investing in new technologies. A lot of them are disruptive, and that's where we see the future going. And so we find different businesses that excite us or industries that excite us and really take a deep dive in and start learning about them. And that might result into further investment. There are other areas where maybe, we'll do a direct investment, or we might just invest through managers. I look at the genomics space. It fascinates me, but I know I'll never understand that. That's for outside managers. But when we look at things like crypto or gaming, AI, anything around the digitalization space, that's an area where we've been very focused over the past almost 10 years now. And it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said, you guys aren't contrarian, though, I'd be interested to talk about when you think of the family office sphere and your peers, how was that experience in 2010 when you first started getting turned on to digital currencies and crypto, and how has that kind of progressed? Because I find often in many of my peer circles of traditional venture that crypto is still kind of, I'm the crypto guy, and that's it could be a taboo subject amongst some of the other investors.
So we've done a lot of innovative investments, and I can tell you none of them have been like crypto. The crypto experience, fortunately, I think it really has changed, but I'd say for the first 5 years was a constant battle with, this is illegal money. Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. I think whenever crypto prices would fall, there was a lot of cheering on the sidelines. sort of see, I told you this would never work.
Sure.
It was really a fight for a very, very long time. Um, for us, again, the good news is we don't have outside investors. So when some Bitcoin falls 20% overnight, um, we try and reflect on it and try and understand what's going on. But we're not getting calls from people saying, why did this happen? You've got to get out of this. And it makes it a lot easier. I remember being on a family office panel on crypto. It's probably 2016, 2017. And one of the biggest questions we would get at that point is, how do you invest in this? How do you get, approval from your investors to do it? And fortunately, our structure allows us to do these things, and it makes it a hell of a lot easier.
So the verdict's still out a little bit among family offices, you would say, but in general, the space is progressing towards more acceptance and more legitimacy.
Oh, 100%. I also think there's a question of what do you see? What really excited us was the blockchain. If you go back to my prior experiences when we ran factories, we spent a lot of time in lean manufacturing and trying to set up different processes and trying to eliminate waste from a process and trying to be more transparent. And when we learned about blockchain, we thought it was lean manufacturing for administration to begin with. Because with blockchain, you were, instead of removing waste from the process, which would be the lean term, you're removing friction. You were still trying to be transparent. You were trying to be decentralized. It was all the things that we were previously trying to do in a manufacturing space. So we've always felt it's a process. We actually feel the same way about blockchain as AI. It's a process there, and you can have the same efficiency improvements. And we're excited about companies that are building on the technology, that are using it to improve different businesses, different sectors. Yes, we have invested in some tokens, but I would tell you a lot of the tokens from our standpoint are pure speculation. We're more interested in the businesses that are building and benefiting from these technologies.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really understand how valuable, right, this tool of a distributed ledger is, where you can see all the different transactions that have occurred. And so, like you said, how much friction that eliminates, also just how it eliminates fraud and then expensive middlemen. I think you having an operational background really helps you appreciate that. And certainly there's tons of use cases that are coming out within businesses, right? Supply chain, healthcare records, like anything. Before, would you have all these despondent databases, and you spent thousands of engineering hours trying to get them to communicate with each other and there to be no errors? How a distributed ledger essentially eliminates all those challenges.
And I think it is, what you're saying is right, because since we lived through it, I spent a couple of years in the food business doing some turnarounds, and we had to do food recalls for Walmart. And it was the craziest process because you're calling your supplier who calls their supplier. We finally get to the farm. It took us weeks to do it. And at the end of the day, we gave a response that was correct to the best of our knowledge, but we didn't know if we were right. And Walmart's used their famous example where they took their supply chain down. I think it was either a mango or a papaya, in seconds. And it's logical. And but again, this goes back to the whole value stream side of lean. It's removing all of the waste from the entire process. You have all these handoffs. Everybody's using another system. If we're all using the same blockchain, it's all connected. It's a lot simpler.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it makes a ton of sense, right? When you take a step back. I
And
want
I
to focus a
think,
little bit on something you said because I
yeah,
think it's definitely a theme of this podcast. So, you talked about when the price goes down, non-investors would cheer. And I want to focus on that because I had this same experience. And I think, that's actually the hardest to go through during a bear cycle, or when, any contrarian asset has not achieved its hopefully eventual valuation increase, right? The reason why you're investing in that asset class in general. And I noticed this as well. I noticed that people that weren't in the asset class, they heavily rooted against it because they didn't want to be confronted with, the fact that they were wrong. And ironically, in the bull markets, that depression switches from the investor who's, trying to mentally struggle with, did I mess up? Did I make the right bet? Right? Like all these different things. And then you have essentially on the other end, you have this person on the sideline, and the person on the sideline is essentially saying, "Oh man, like I really really messed up during a bull market, right? Like this asset is increasing. I missed out, and the depression sort of switches. But I found I almost had to really like step away from some circles, because there was so much of this crowd mentality during a bear market, and we're kind of going through that right now. That it kind of creeps into your psyche. I want to talk a little bit about your experience with that, and then how you stay convicted when investments aren't working out in real time, or from the outside observer where they could maybe point a finger and say, "Oh, you guys messed up."
I mean, it, I'm trying to think of the right way to go through this. So there's no question people were cheering against us. And then when the market started picking up, I remember going to meetings, and to show you sort of the history with family offices, in 15, 16, 17, I kept on talking about this and I couldn't get anybody to listen to me.
Yeah.
By about 18, 19, I was allowed to speak at like the 7:30 breakfast before a 9 o'clock meeting where you had a few people showing up. Then finally, 2021, we were allowed to really participate in real meetings. But at that point, the shock to me was people wanted to talk, for lack of a better word, about shitcoins and what are the new tokens that are coming out where you're definitely going to make $1 million.
Right.
And we were trying to pull people back at that point, saying, listen, and it's sort of the story we told people from the beginning. This is the future, and you need to understand the basics. Um, Clearly, Bitcoin and Ethereum are the easiest to follow and make the most sense here. But there were so many people later on who finally were so-called experts talking about coins you've never heard of that I can promise you have all disappeared today. You know, what going back again to sort of how we look at things, money is digital anyway. And I know we have a cash society, but the reality is 90%, probably 95% of all cash in the US is digital. Everyone, if I ask you how much money you have today, you probably maybe have 50, couple $100 in your wallet. But when I say, no, really, how much money do you have? Prove it. You're going to show me a ledger. And we'll probably go online on your phone and you'll show me some bank account where it says you have X dollars. Um, I travel a fair amount. And if you go over to Asia, I mean, everything there has been on mobile for a long time. So that's what already got us excited to begin with the whole crypto concept, is we felt we're moving in that direction to begin with. And then you add some of the benefits of the ability to taking out that intermediary, it just made logical sense. And that's sort of how we go through our investment process. We find technologies we like, and then we start trying to determine how they're used and what's the real benefit of it. And everything sounds great. I mean, in the venture tech space, you hardly find a project that isn't exciting. It's going to change the world. And I get enamored with a lot of things, and it forces us to take a step back and say, how is this technology going to be used? What competition is out there? We've worked really, really hard to develop a process that allows us to look at it. Because we're operators, I think a lot of times venture capitalists focus so much on their companies and how their companies run their operations and not on themselves. We actually developed, it's like a process flow of how we look at companies. And we've also learned, we sort of, I call it like a generational investment process. Um, we sort of have three generations, and they're not in the same family. I mean, we're a family office, but we hire professionals outside the family to help us run our money. I had a situation probably in about 2016. Normally, we have many people at meetings. This one I went in alone, and I was pitched on a social payments network. It was the most impressive thing. I loved it. Ready to make an investment, came out, started talking to one of our analysts, and he immediately said, "Oh, that's Venmo." And at that point in time, I had no idea what Venmo was. And I said, "No, no, 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 no. Let's call it Mike payment."
Sure.
And he said, "No, no, no, that's Venmo." And I literally at the point got annoyed with him. I was like, "Shut up about Venmo. Let me tell you about this great company." And he's like, "Let me show you Venmo." And he pulls out his phone and showed it to me. And I was like, I just wasted an hour of my life in a meeting. Um,
You were
we
thinking,
we think,
do they know about this? The
oh
company
yeah,
pitched you.
absolutely. No, it was the greatest thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And it was bringing in someone with a different perspective. In this case, we bring in some younger people, and it helps us. They have a different view than we have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've had that happen in pitches before too, where you're just super impressed, and then you do a Google search or
Oh, this was the greatest thing early. Yeah, exactly right.
right or
I
talk to
loved it.
somebody. And you're, oh, there's this has been done many times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think the other big thing that may differentiate us a little bit in the early investing space, we're not unicorn hunting. I mean, we're business builders first and foremost. So I think I spent some time with a company at a demo day recently, and every company there kept on saying how to get to $100 million in ARR. I mean, that's wonderful. But for a startup, that's a big step forward. We'd like you to get to $10 million. And if we can build businesses like that, we'll be successful. At the same time, it makes it a lot easier because it is a game of odds. But at $10 million, your odds go up dramatically. And you get a company that is 10 million in ARR, you can get some real value out of that in the long term. The best companies are getting 20% hit rates. Well, our odds go up a hell of a lot by lowering that number from 100 to 10. Makes it a lot easier for us.
Yeah, when I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I still do quite a bit of mentorship with newer companies and teams, it's really fascinating how often they don't really embrace the simple question of just tell me why this is a good business, right? And so there's so much of and I think venture has helped indirectly with this, where you're providing capital based on, like you said, some we're going to be a unicorn, or we're going to achieve some lofty metrics. There's not enough focus on just, hey, this is an awesome business because a lot of people want it. We make it for $1, we sell it for 10. Just like a simple kind of hit you
Yeah.
between the eyes statement like that, it just doesn't happen that often. And I almost believe that a lot of these teams aren't even thinking of it that way, where I think I would argue that's the first thing you should be thinking about is like, do we have a good business model?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, one of the things that I tell people all the time, just the elevator pitch is what matters. If I spend an hour with you and I don't understand what you're doing, there's something wrong.
Right.
And I'm not the most brightest guy, so that's why we have other people in the room. But after we'll talk about it, and when we start discussing it, none of us know what you're talking about. It just doesn't make sense. And everyone feels, well, you have a half hour with me, you have an hour, and you have to tell me everything about your company. That's not true at all. You need to tell me what your company is and what it does, and really what solution you're solving. If we're interested, us and every other company will find the time to learn a lot more of you later on. But people have been, ingrained with, nope, we've got to tell you everything. And I got a pitch the other day where they had 4 slides on the founder, literally going back to
I've
when
never
he
seen
started his
that.
first business. At 10 years old, he did this and he was helping his grandfather. I was like, that's great. I don't care.
Right. And
You know,
your customer doesn't care.
your customer doesn't care.
Right.
And I think, that point you make there that your customer doesn't care, this is sort of the learnings we've had from some of our operating businesses. There are lots of things that I believed and I felt were necessary. And then you would talk to the customer and they're like, yeah, we don't even use that feature. It means nothing to us. This is what we want. Understanding your customer is key and building your business around that. And even though you have this great idea, how well do you really know that business from the customer's perspective?
Yeah, my advice to startups is always don't like I know the least about your business. Don't allow me to make a decision. Don't force me to make a decision in 30 minutes on whether I believe what you're saying or not. Just show me the data, right? Like if you're saying customers want
Well said.
this, show me all the testimonials, show me all the interviews with executives, show me your pre-sales data or your sales data. And you can always do some sort of like pre-sales, right? Especially on the B2B side. Um, don't make me be the person that has to come in and like almost a gun to my head, listen to something for 30 minutes and then decide, do I think it's legit or not? Just show me the data that it is and explain to me the business model. And that'll pretty much do what we need to get done in that meeting.
Absolutely correct.
That's cool. I noticed you wrote a book on the metaverse, and I want to dive a little bit deeper. Talk a little bit about this book, um, and what inspired you to write about it, and what are your feelings on the metaverse? I think this is a topic a lot of companies have been discussing, a lot of executives, and there's sort of been this: is it dying? Is it going to reemerge? Give us the scoop.
So the book was really a project that sort of got started. There's a company called Asaline that makes wonderful books. They're coffee table books, really high quality. And someone actually gave me one on F1 racing. And we were talking about it and said, how could we create something similar? And we approached Asaline with the idea of making a book on the metaverse. And it's wonderful, and Asaline sells it today, and we're very happy. I mean, it's turned into a really fun project. But what really excites me, and I got to take a step back. I'm very fortunate in life, and I get to now be the nerd that I've always wanted to be. I get to play with lots of things. You can probably see in the back, there's toys on my shelves. I love going to Disney. I love sort of taking that step out of reality and seeing what can be. And the metaverse gives you the ability to break all those paradigms because imagination does have physical barriers and limits.
Sure.
And with the metaverse, you can have that imagination without that physical structure blocking what happens. We're sitting in our offices today. The fact is, in the metaverse, and there's long definitions of what you may feel is a real metaverse. We could be having this discussion on a mountaintop or on the beach. Um, I think from an educational side, there's great benefits for it. I'm just really excited about what it can be. And the idea, Ready Player One, the movie, I think, did a great job. And I recommend it to everyone who doesn't understand the whole concept of metaverse. really gave the ability of you can be someone else, you can be in different worlds. That's what's exciting. It's really allowing that imagination to really reach a new level. And we've been trying to invest in for a while. I will tell you it's tough. A lot of people have stepped away from it. The virtual reality space has been difficult. We hope now with the Quest 3 from Meta coming out, plus Apple's new Vision Pro coming out, that's going to change things and take it to the next level. But like anything else, and this almost goes back to how we started talking about crypto, you really have to have a real use. And what's the so-called killer app? Right behind my camera, I have an AOL disk on my wall. And in the early 90s, I learned TCP/IP, and I used to sort of have basically digital pen pals where we would send messages to each other. And in about 93, 94, I remember AOL came out and my parents got it, like everyone else in a magazine or at the supermarket. They got these discs, they loaded it, and they suddenly had access to the World Wide Web. And they had digital mail and they could have chats with people. And it really revolutionized that whole industry. And I don't think we're getting there with crypto. I mean, Coinbase has done a very, very good job, and other exchanges have too, um, allowing people to buy product and with the education. But we need to have more of these killer apps in every single area. You look at what happened in AI with ChatGPT, and I think that actually got released earlier than expected. But it was the topic of conversation last Christmas with everyone. Numbers have gone down a little bit, but it was something that everybody could use. You didn't need to know coding to do it. It was a simple user interface, and you just went in and worked on it. And that goes back again to looking at products that we're investing in. From the customer's perspective, how does it work? How is it used? A lot of people will create something. We look at gaming. Browser games are not a big thing today, and they haven't been for a long time. People really like mobile games. People like console games. I mean, PC games, I think, are superior. But when a lot of people started getting into browser games, and frankly, they weren't fun. And it's got to be, games have to be fun for people to play them. And here you had people coming in from a blockchain side, sort of saying, we're going to make this better. What you're using, Mr. Gamer, doesn't work. And the gamers are looking at each other saying, we like what we have. We've been very happy with it. There have been some new games that have come out that are now a lot better using blockchain technology, but that again are fun to play. I mean, I play NFL Rivals probably more than I should, but I enjoy it. It's a quick break. Yes, with blockchain, I can own my actual players. I can trade my players on an exchange. I can sell them. Makes the game a little bit more interesting. But at the end of the day, I'm still playing the game. It's not about monetizing your assets. It's playing the game. And if I can monetize the assets too, that's great. But it's funny. I get emails for NFL Rivals where people offer me money. No one's offered me, and it's $25, $50. If they start offering a lot more, I'll probably sell. But I don't want to sell my players. I like my players. That's again, it's got to be fun. If I'm having a little emotion over the game, I enjoy it.
Right.
If you're not having something you enjoy, or your client or customer doesn't enjoy it, doesn't benefit them, it's probably not going to work.
Yeah, well, I know we've talked about this in the past, and I just recently spoke about this, but I think, when you talk about blockchain specifically and crypto and digital assets, what's surprised me so much as I've done, deep dives into the space is kind of the lack of lean principles, lean startup principles of, interviewing your customers, distilling a pain point, and then building a solution specifically tailored to that pain point. And I think, you have this potentially universal use case technology, right, which is the blockchain. And there's lots of companies working on the metaverse, they're working on gaming, like you mentioned, different sectors, but they're kind of going in the reverse order, right? Of what I think is the gold standard, which is they've built a technology and now they're trying to figure out a home for it. And to your point, I think that's what you've seen a lot in gaming, which is, hey, look at all these cool things that you can do if you play a blockchain game versus a Web 2 or a centralized game. And the gamer's like, yeah, that's great, but we never asked for that.
Exactly.
We'd have to think about how important that is to us. And you're going to get lots of nuances in the answers, and you're going to have to look at broad data. But to your point, you're a gamer and you're saying, look, like it would be cool if I could do this, but it's not the reason why I'm playing the game in the first place. I'm not trying to run a side business. And I think you saw that a lot with gaming, where you saw these third world countries and people were saying, in blockchain at the last bull market, oh, people can make $70 a day, farming in this game. But it's like, but that's not even what the game is for, right? Like
Yeah.
the game is, the purpose of the
Some of
game
those
is not to
games
run
you're
around.
referencing were never fun to play.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's like now
You're
you've just
generating
traded.
money, but it's like, okay,
Right. Right.
right.
Exactly. And I see this all the time, right? I mean, I think, it's funny. I was doing a lot of executive education and still do about Web3 and blockchain. And a lot of corporations initially gravitated towards the idea of a metaverse, but it wasn't something they asked for. What they really are asking for, obviously, is more customers, right? Greater brand awareness, but all of it leads to more revenue and potentially decrease expenses. But I would say bottom line, like all activities of a business. And so they're trying to think through, well, we could do this. We're going to try this. We're going to try that. Maybe we'll have a digital storefront. But what you're seeing in that language, or what you're not seeing, is, oh, this is a pain point we've had for years. This is something that was on our radar. And it's a real problem. I mean, to your point, I think you have a lot of crypto teams that are essentially kind of stuck, where they've spent all this, capital building out engineering stacks and building out technology solutions. And now they're trying to find a home for it, which of course is like reverse to the traditional process that you would see with a Web 2 company. In fact, I don't even think you'd see a pitch from a Web 2 company that had just built tech, but hadn't really found a home for it yet.
I also think this is still early technology. One of our biggest failures, when I go back in time, has been in investing in things too early.
Yeah.
And it's the, someone will pitch you an idea. I fall in love with it. We do our homework, but people feel with startups you can't do a lot of homework. You actually can. You can look at the industry more. And that's one of the areas, we try and do lessons learned and try and come back as part of our process to see how to do things better. But one of the biggest failures I've seen in blockchain, and a lot of people put money into it, is voting. And I'll tell you, I think voting is one of the best examples of a segment that could benefit from blockchain. Because when we vote today, at least when I vote, I go fill out a form, I give it to a very nice older person who takes it, and I leave and they give me a sticker. And I feel I voted and I did my civic duty. I don't even know if they threw it out.
Right.
So the idea that I could go online and enter a code or something and verify that I actually did vote for candidate X or candidate Y is a great idea. And it gets away from all of the questions over where there's fraudulent voting and everything else. Problem is, this was a concept that a bunch of people came up with, looked at blockchain technology, said, we're going to change this market. But they didn't look at it well enough. How does voting work? And you have a Secretary of State in each state who determines the process. We should have done our homework and interviewed some secretaries of state, because if we'd interviewed them early, we never would have made the investment. Because talking to them later, I can tell you we never should have made the investments, because they were like, no, we don't believe in this technology.
Right.
There's also the issue that it would replace those people. So, it's very tough to come up with a technology that I'm trying to sell to you when I'm really going to eliminate your position. I mean,
Right.
this isn't an idea where we're going to maybe make some efficiency changes. When we would use lean manufacturing in the factories, we would make commitments to our teams. Your position today might change, but we'll put you in another position. We're not going to eliminate your job. We might eliminate your current function. And the idea of selling a company to a customer where the first thing is, I'm going to eliminate you, that's just not a very smart, way to start the conversation.
Right.
And we saw that, with voting. And I still think voting is a wonderful idea. I think it will go to blockchain, but it's going to take several more years.
Yeah.
We were just too early.
What you described, I've seen a lot, right? Which is, and I've seen this in my Web 2 career as well as my Web 3 career, where people make this assumption: I have an idea. I think it's a good idea. I think it makes sense that the world should work this way or work differently. And then they just run off and try to build a business from that.
That's it.
And it's one of the biggest mistakes, right? It's a big mistake, I think, in general, to just think you understand the perception and the point of view from the purchaser or the eventual customer. I also think it's a huge mistake to assume that the majority of the world sees the world and how it should be in the way that you do. And I think it's actually like being a good entrepreneur is a lot of just detective work, right? It's a lot of just uncovering the truth and asking a lot
Yeah,
of,
most
why do you do that way? And, what problems are top of your mind this year? What would you pay a ridiculous amount of money to solve right now? Like, what have you guys been talking about? And then, figuring out how do we solve that. And to your point, people don't care about the technology.
no.
Nobody buys an iPhone and talks about how, it's got this new processor, and they talk about the use case. And ultimately, when I talk with crypto companies, and it's the same with Web 2 companies, I say, look, like, your customer, the technology should almost be the last part of the conversations, where it's just, we're going to get you greater market share. We're going to increase revenue. We're going to decrease expenses, all these amazing, wonderful things that you want to have happen. Oh, that's amazing. We're in. By the way, how do you do it? Oh, we do it, with blockchain, for example. Oh, great. Like, don't care that much. Love that you can do that through blockchain, but I really, that's kind of like, I wanted to know, but I didn't have to know to make the purchase. I wanted the results of the technology.
And I think you can see that perfectly in like the evolution of pitch decks in this industry. Because in 16, 17, 18, I mean, there were probably single slides that said blockchain that would flash at you the whole time. And the companies were stressing, we're a blockchain company, we're a blockchain company. Now, those same companies don't even mention blockchain in their pitch decks.
Right.
And exactly as you said, if you want to talk about the tech stack, they're happy to walk you through it. But they're not, you don't lead with a tech stack. I mean, I'm sure there's certain situations, just not areas we invest in. It's what can you do? What's the solution you're bringing to people? And that's what matters. And then later they may ask, how do you do it? And that's when you bring in your technical team and can go in great detail. But most customers won't go to that detail.
Right. And it's like you said, it's a check the box at the end, right? It's like, okay, we'll bring the tech team and validate that what you're saying is legit and that your systems communicate with our systems and there's not going to be any problems. But the decision to purchase has already been made effectively. Obviously, if something comes back that's a red flag, that can influence it. But by the time you get there, it's pretty much, yes, we want this. We want the results of this technology. By the way, just talk to our tech team to make sure everything works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So you talked a little bit about being early, and some of the investments that went poorly. Talk to us a little bit more about some of your wins, some of your losses, and what have you guys learned? What have been your greatest lessons as a contrarian investor? And I know you don't identify yourself as that, but I think you're a
No, no, no.
contrarian investor.
I understand. I think, it really comes down to taking the lessons that we've learned through the years, whether it's the simplest thing like asking the right questions. And at times, I've tried to be respectful of management teams, and maybe I didn't want to ask all the questions, or worse, they would say something and I would assume I know what they're getting to.
Right.
Go back and ask the question again. There's nothing wrong with that. It is a long term relationship. Um, if we're asking questions they don't want to answer, that's a flag. Little things. We want more than one manager. A lot of companies have that single founder. We'd really like founding teams. It's to their benefit. They can work off each other. But if that one manager suddenly makes a lot of money, he may disappear. And then what happens to the company? It's things like that we've just learned to look at it a little bit differently, to do due diligence on our teams. I mean, there's a lot of information we can find, and people feel in the startup space, oh, well, I'm investing on an idea and the team because there's just not a lot of information around. There's a lot of information around. From looking at the competition, from really diving into who these management teams are, what are their experiences, talk to their prior customers. A lot of people feel, well, if they've had one or two startups under their belt, that's a wonderful sign. It is a good sign. But let's talk to their customers and hear what they did well. What did they do poorly? How do we work well with those teams? I mean, those are the things. And it comes really down to this process again. It's the same things that we'd like our companies to do, to have a reliable method, to really be structured in how they're doing everything, from how they collect money to how they sell their product. We've just decided to do it ourselves. I think we do have a very good culture where we're all trying to support each other, and it allows us to ask questions without feeling we're being attacked. I mean, I'll walk into a meeting with a company that I really like, and if someone asks a question that might be counter to my whole thesis, okay, I'm willing to walk away and I don't feel attacked. I mean, one of our great lessons learned was, this was quite early, but we were getting pitched probably 2016, 2017 about a Bloomberg of crypto, where you're going to get crypto data. And it was limited back then. So I thought this was the greatest idea I've ever heard. And we had a meeting, and our CIO was there, and he turned around and said, don't you think Bloomberg is going to build the Bloomberg of crypto data? And it was such a simple question, but I was like, yeah, actually I do. And so we never invested in that one company. Um, Having a culture where we can ask questions and discuss these topics without feeling that we're being attacked is fortunate, I think, but it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I think, look, questions are a sign of interest. And so they should be embraced, right? And a lot of times it's not as much the answer to the question as the way that the question is answered. Like saying, I don't know is fine. Saying we're looking into that is fine. But being defensive about getting asked a question certainly is not a good sign, especially for a team that is trying to essentially build an airplane while flying it, which is like the common analogy for building a startup, which is you have to ask a lot of questions and you have to challenge your fundamental assumptions because you're going to be wrong, right? I mean, if there's anything when you're doing anything new is you're going to be wrong a lot. And so you have to be able to embrace that.
And that's, I mean, where we try and diversify, how we're investing in companies that, again, it is a game of odds. As operators, even starting new business or acquiring businesses, there were some successes and there were failures. I mean, it's my father proudly had two bills. He had a dollar bill and a Deutschmark on the wall in his apartment. He still does today. And if you would ask him about it, he would tell you the Deutschmark was a copy of a check that he bought a company in Germany for, one Deutschmark, and very proudly sold it 10 years later for a lot of money. If you ask him about the dollar bill, he'll tell you about a company in the oil and gas business where we bought a cement pipe company because we felt cement pipes were the future of oil and gas. And we ended up selling it for $1 years later. Actually, not much longer. Um, Part of the lesson there was don't get into a business you know nothing about. And we knew nothing about cement pipes. But it also gave me that sort of the learning that, there's good and bad investments. And we'll continue doing it. And we've been fortunate in a lot of things we've done, but not everything has succeeded. And again, a lot of investments we've made have been too early. One of our first investments in the crypto and blockchain space was in IoT, and way too early.
Yeah.
It was our first zero, unfortunately, and it's great company, great team, very good product, but just too early. The industry wasn't ready for it. They didn't understand what it was, and everybody wanted to talk to us because they wanted to learn, not buy. And we got very excited about everybody, all these wonderful meetings we were having, but unfortunately they weren't leading to any accounts, any revenue. They were just nice dinners.
Well,
Tell us what this technology is.
one of the things I've always appreciated about our conversations is you look at a lot of different things. And I know we were talking a little bit about AI recently and how, I'll let you talk about it, but it seemed like you were seeing just a lot of copycats and you weren't inspired. Like, let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the AI front. And then lastly, I kind of want to tie that into what are you seeing on the intersection of AI and blockchain front as well? But let's start with AI.
So on the AI side, again, it's a process for us. It's a technology that makes things more efficient. And how is it being used? We play with a lot of these technologies. Maybe it makes it a little bit more easier in some of the areas we focus in. But when you tell me about your great game or when you tell me about your great AI models, we want to demo them and we want to see how they work. And, we try a lot of things. And are they making your life better? And if they're not making it better, if they're not making it simpler, and today I don't see a lot of things that are really, really making things better and more efficient. We've looked at a lot of financial models where AI is going to basically, have take go into generative AI and you can say, okay, give me the summary of this 10K that just came out. They don't work too well right now. I'm sure they'll be better, but hallucinations are an issue, and that comes up. But I'm very excited about it because I think the technology will be getting better. Whether you get into a real question, what is AI? Is Excel macros an AI? I mean, in a way, it is. It's some type of learning model, and those things, if it can make our lives better, Jamie Dimon said last week, he could see the work week going to 3.5 days. Maybe it does. I just hope it's not like in Wall-E where we all become fat and sit in floating lawn chairs at the end of
Float
the day,
around.
floating around. On the question about AI and blockchain, I actually take the idea that with when we talk about Web3, I look at Web3 as the three components, which is obviously an incorrect definition of really what it is. But I look at it that you have the blockchain side, you have the smart contract side, and then you have AI. And one of the real questions that is struggling, or where the industry is struggling with today, is on data sets And content is key in AI. You need the data set. How do I provide my data set to you and allow you to use it? And I think blockchain has that possibility. And we're actively looking now at the music royalty business.
Hmm.
And a bunch of companies have tried getting into that in blockchain. A lot of them talk about it. We're trying to find the real use cases of how it's working. And it's exactly on that concept that if I have a unique data set, I might be willing to allow you to use it. And then you could assure me payment through a blockchain. That's how we think this first real connection will be made with AI and blockchain.
Yeah, that's cool. I agree. I mean, I think there's tons of use cases, and something that you made me think about. We've touched on it thematically here. Is one of the reasons why I think some of these technologies have struggled is customer satisfaction is key to the success, right, of any
Yeah.
sector. And some of these sectors, they've been talked about in sci-fi and really ingrained as concepts into our culture for so long. Like you think about, the metaverse and virtual reality. My personal belief is one of the biggest struggles there is the expectation of your average customer is if I'm buying a VR headset, it's going to feel like I'm in the Matrix, right? Like I'm going to have this experience where I look around and I can't tell that I have a headset on, and I can, smell the breeze on the mountaintop that I've suddenly been transported to, and I can taste the snow and feel the temperature. It's essentially, where we're probably going to be. I mean, who knows, but like 50 years or something, that's essentially the expectations of people. And so even though you can have the best engineering teams and the best advances in technology and the latest technology in a new product, people put it on, they go, oh, I thought it was going to be more. And I think you're seeing that a little bit with AI too, like to your point, where it's like, it's cool that you can do this thing and through AI, but you're doing it worse than, you mentioned like your 10K, you're doing it worse than my account. And that's not my expectation. My expectation is I'm going to have a virtual buddy that I tell to go do things, and they're going to do it seamlessly and know,
And I
how to
want to
like
use it.
connect all these complicated steps.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the VR example, everyone I know, and we've given people VR headsets in the office, they use it for the first few weeks. They think it's the most incredible thing. They show their family, they show their friends, and then it sits on a shelf building dust.
Right.
And because there's no killer app for it, there's no real use for it. It's the same thing with AI. It's how are we going to use it?
Right.
There's a lot of discussion about AI companions now. We've tried a lot of them, but my first question I always ask is, "Where are you?" And they're in New York. And then 2 seconds later, then I ask something like, "What should I read?" And then I ask again, "Where are you?" And they're in LA. And the minute I know that they're not even keeping my information, you know, as part of the new model to learn from, shows the technology is not there yet.
Right. Yeah. That's
But
intuitive.
like I watch a lot of those movies, and I'm excited about those movies
Yeah.
happening, and the future. And I think we'll get there, but it takes a lot of time. And so that's one of the real challenges, is to figure out when are we ready to go forward in these areas. And so we'll just continue trying them all. And you know, we're looking at a company right now, and I was at this one demo day last week. It really impressed me. There were about 10 companies who got up and spoke. And then at the end of the demo day, it's like, okay, meeting's over. If you want to network for a little bit, go home. Thanks for coming. One company went around to everybody and said, would you like to see how my product works?
Mm,
And they let us all demo it right there on the spot. And it worked. And it was impressive.
that's cool.
That's the type of thing. Now, I mean, they're further along than maybe some other people will be, and other people can't do that, but you can still keep that discussion going. And that was exciting. It was like, wow, so I can see how I'm using your product right now.
Yeah.
And we're still talking to that company right now, so we'll see where that goes. But it's That's what the objective here is. You're still trying to solve a problem, but it's not solving a problem. It's delivering a service or delivering something to that customer. So if you can put yourself in the customer's shoes, it's even easier.
100%. Yeah. Or just like use the customer's actual words, right?
Absolutely.
Like don't use your own biases.
Yeah.
Um, well, look, Greg, this has been a lot of fun. I wanted to plug a little bit your newsletter. I know you've got your newsletter, Bit Digest. So everybody go out and check out Greg's newsletter and subscribe. Thanks for being on our podcast,
Thanks for
and thanks
having
for
me.
joining. It was a lot of fun.